Jake Morrison looked out the small window of his shuttle as it approached the massive alien station. The structure was unlike anything humans had ever built, with twisted spires and glowing rings that seemed to defy physics. This was Zarian Prime Station, home to the Galactic Council that ruled over dozens of worlds and billions of alien beings. The shuttle pilot, a young woman named Kelly Adams, kept her hands steady on the controls despite the obvious nervousness in her voice. She had trained for months to fly alien technology, but this was her first real mission outside human space. The docking procedure alone required following 17 different protocols that the aliens had insisted upon. Jake adjusted his formal diplomatic uniform one last time and reviewed his speech notes. As Earth's first official ambassador to the Yastu Galactic Council, he carried the hopes and dreams of every human being. 3 years of careful negotiations through alien intermediaries had led to this moment. He would present humanity's case for membership in the galactic community. Behind them, maintaining what the aliens called a respectful distance, Captain Lisa Brooks commanded the escort vessel UE Scifiance. The ship was humanity's most advanced warship, though Jake knew it was primitive compared to what the aliens possessed. Lisa had served in the Earth Defense Force for 15 years and had personally requested this assignment when she learned about the diplomatic mission on the bridge of the Defiance. Tactical Officer Ben Parker monitored the alien station's energy signatures, while communications specialist Amy Carter tracked the countless radio transmissions flowing between the station and nearby ships. Both officers had studied alien languages and customs for 2 years, preparing for this historic first contact. The shuttle docked with a gentle thud that Jake barely felt. Kelly powered down the engines and gave him a thumbs up. Through the airlock came a strange smell, like ozone mixed with something floral that human noses had never encountered. The artificial gravity felt slightly different, too, making Jake's steps feel lighter than they should. 2 alien escorts waited for him in the docking bay. One was tall and thin with blue skin and forearms, while the other looked somewhat like a giant insect covered in shimmering scales. They wore elaborate robes and spoke in perfect English, though their voices had an odd mechanical quality that suggested they were using translation devices. The walk to the council chambers took nearly 20 minutes through corridors that seemed designed for beings much larger than humans. Jake passed hundreds of aliens from dozens of different species. Some looked almost human, while others defied description. A few stared at him with obvious curiosity, but most ignored him completely. Council chamber itself took Jake's breath away. The room was enormous, with a domed ceiling that showed images of distant stars and nebulae. 12 raised platforms surrounded a central speaking area where Jake would present his case. Each platform held representatives from different alien species, some sitting in chairs, while others floated in specialized pods filled with glowing liquid. High Counselor Vextar of the Selani Empire occupied the highest platform. His species looked somewhat like humans, but with crystalline growths covering their heads and arms. The crystals shifted color as he spoke, apparently reflecting his emotional state. When he looked down at Jake, the crystals turned to neutral blue. The other council members represented species that Jake had studied but never seen in person. The Korath Federation was represented by beings that looked like armored reptiles with glowing red eyes. The peaceful Etherians appeared almost ghost-like, their translucent bodies barely visible even in the bright chamber lighting. There were others whose names Jake could barely pronounce, and whose biology seemed impossible. When Vextar called the session to order, his voice echoed through the chamber with surprising authority. Jake stepped forward to the speaking platform and felt the weight of history on his shoulders. Every word he spoke would be transmitted back to Earth and recorded for future generations. Jake began his prepared speech about human achievements. and their desire for peaceful coexistence. He spoke of Earth's diverse cultures, how different nations had learned to work together despite their differences. He described human technological innovations, their art and music, their exploration of their own solar system, and their dream of reaching the stars. The council members listened in silence, their alien faces revealing nothing of their thoughts. Jake had practiced reading alien expressions, but in person, it was much more difficult than he had expected. Some species communicated through color changes, while others used subtle body movements that human eyes could barely detect. When Jake finished his opening statement, Counselor Thekmer of the Korath Federation rose to speak. His species was known throughout the galaxy as fierce warriors who settled disputes through combat. His voice was harsh and grating as he questioned humanity's violent history and what he called their aggressive tendencies. Thekmer displayed holographic images of human wars, from ancient battles with swords and shields to modern conflicts with advanced weapons. He pointed to statistics about human military spending and the number of weapons that Earth's nations possessed. His argument was clear. Humans were too dangerous to be trusted with membership in a peaceful galactic community. Other council members joined the debate. Some supported Thekmer's position, while others argued that humanity had shown the ability to change and grow. The Etherian representative spoke in a whisper-soft voice about the beauty of human art and literature. An insect-like being from the Hive Worlds mentioned human scientific achievements and their potential contributions to galactic knowledge. The discussion continued for hours. Jake was allowed to respond to specific questions and accusations, but he could feel the mood of the chamber shifting. What had begun as a formal presentation was becoming a trial, with humanity's entire species being judged by beings who had never set foot on Earth. As the day wore on, Jake noticed that several council members seemed to have already made up their minds. The Korath representative looked at him with obvious hostility, while others appeared bored by the proceedings. Only a few seemed genuinely interested in what humanity might offer the galaxy. When Vextar finally called for a recess, Jake felt both exhausted and hopeful. Despite the opposition from some species, others had spoken in favor of human membership. The debate had been heated but civil, and Jake believed that reason would ultimately prevail. He was escorted to comfortable quarters within the station where he could rest and prepare for the next day's session. The room was designed for humanoid beings and included a bed, desk, and even a window that showed the stars outside. Jake sent a message to Captain Brooks, assuring her that negotiations were proceeding normally, and that he expected a decision within a few days. As he prepared for sleep, Jake reviewed the day's events and planned his strategy for tomorrow. He had additional arguments prepared and statistical data that might sway the undecided council members. The fate of humanity's future among the stars would be decided soon, and Jake was determined to make the strongest possible case for his species. The alien station continued its silent orbit around Zirian Prime as Jake finally fell asleep, unaware that his fate had already been sealed by forces beyond his understanding. 3 days passed in tense silence while the Galactic Council deliberated behind closed doors. Jake Morrison spent the time in his assigned quarters, reviewing his notes and preparing additional arguments for humanity's case. The alien station provided him with food that was safe for human consumption, though it tasted strange and had an odd texture that reminded him of processed protein bars. Each morning, Jake would walk through the station's public areas, observing the daily life of dozens of alien species. He watched traders from distant worlds negotiate deals in languages that sounded like music or static electricity. Children from various species played games that involved floating objects and changing colors. Everything seemed peaceful and civilized, which gave Jake hope that reason would prevail in the Council's decision. Back on Earth, Admiral Kate Sullivan maintained her position at the Pentagon's command center, receiving regular updates through quantum communication relays. The technology was still new and expensive, but it allowed near-instantaneous communication across the vast distances of space. Every 6 hours, Jake would send a brief message confirming his safety and status at the joint. Chiefs of staff met daily to discuss the diplomatic mission. General Rick Hayes reviewed contingency plans, while Admiral Steve Collins coordinated with allied fleets positioned just outside the solar system. Both men were experienced military leaders who understood the importance of being prepared for any outcome. Though they hoped Jake's mission would succeed, President Helen Martinez held daily briefings in the Oval Office, surrounded by her top advisors and military commanders. The entire world was watching and waiting for news from the Galactic Council. Opinion polls showed that 97% of Americans supported the diplomatic mission, with similar numbers reported from every nation on Earth. On the morning of the 4th day, Jake received a message requesting his immediate presence in the council chamber. The alien escort who delivered the message seemed different somehow, more formal and distant than before. Jake noticed that additional security guards were present in the corridors. Though he assumed this was normal protocol for important announcements, Captain Lisa Brooks monitored the situation from the bridge of the UEZ Defiance. Her tactical officer, Ben Parker, had detected increased energy signatures from the station's defensive systems, but alien technology was still largely mysterious to human sensors. Communications specialist Amy Carter maintained an open channel to Earth, ready to transmit whatever news emerged from the council session. The council chamber felt different when Jake entered. The lighting seemed harsher, and the air carried a tension that made his skin crawl. All 12 council members were present on their platforms, their alien faces showing expressions that Jake could not read. High Counselor Vex Star, crystalline. Features had changed to a dark purple color that Jake had never seen before, stood and began speaking in a voice that echoed through the chamber with cold authority. He announced that the Galactic Council had reached a unanimous decision regarding humanity's application for membership. Jake stepped forward, expecting to hear either acceptance with conditions or perhaps a request for additional information about human society. Instead, Vexstar declared that humanity posed an unacceptable threat to galactic stability and peace. The Council had reviewed Earth's history and found evidence of what they called inherent aggressive tendencies that could not be overcome through civilization or education. The decision was final and would not be subject to appeal or reconsideration. Jake felt his heart sink as he realized what this meant for his species. He immediately began to protest, explaining that human violence was largely a thing of the past and that Earth's nations had learned to resolve conflicts through diplomacy. He spoke about the United Nations and international law, about how humans had explored space peacefully and approached the galaxy with open hands, rather than weapons. Councilor Vicmer of the Korath Federation interrupted Jake's plea with a harsh laugh. He displayed new holographic evidence that the Council had gathered, showing human military installations and weapon development programs. The images included details about Earth's defensive preparations and the fleet positioned outside the solar system, information that should have been classified and impossible for aliens to obtain. Other Council members joined in presenting their case against humanity. They spoke about human expansion into their solar system and the establishment of colonies on Mars and the moons of Jupiter. They interpreted human space exploration as evidence of territorial ambition rather than scientific curiosity. Even humanity's diplomatic overtures were seen as attempts to gather intelligence about alien weaknesses. Jake tried desperately to counter each argument, but the Council members seemed to have already made their decision. The Etherian representative, who had spoken favorably about human art just days before, now remained silent. The insect-like beings from the hive worlds clicked their mandibles in what Jake had learned was a sign of agreement with the majority. Opinion. Vexstar raised his hand for silence and pronounced the Council's final judgment. Humanity was declared a threat to galactic peace and stability. As Earth's official representative, Jake Morrison was personally responsible for bringing this threat to the attention of civilized species. The penalty for such an offense was death, to be carried out immediately as a warning to any who might follow humanity's example. Before Jake could react or even comprehend what was happening, Korath guards moved swiftly to restrain him. Their grip was like iron, and their armored hands left no possibility of escape. Jake shouted that he was a diplomatic envoy, protected by the same laws that governed all civilized species. But his protests fell on deaf ears. The execution was swift and efficient, carried out with alien technology that Jake did not recognize. His final words were spoken clearly and recorded by the Council systems. Humanity will remember this betrayal. We came in peace, and you answered with murder. My people will not forget. The footage of Jake's execution was immediately broadcast across Council space as both a warning and a demonstration of the Council's resolve. Species throughout the galaxy watched as the human ambassador died, some with satisfaction, and others with growing unease about what they had just witnessed. Captain Brooks watched the execution from the bridge of the Defiance and felt her world collapse around her. The crew stood in stunned silence as their screens showed Jake's final moments. Ben Parker immediately began calculating attack vectors against the alien station while Amy Carter frantically attempted to contact Earth with the devastating news. The quantum communication system carried the news to Earth within hours. Admiral Sullivan received the transmission first and immediately convened an emergency meeting of the Joint Chiefs. President Martinez was awakened at 3 a.m. and briefed on the situation by grim-faced military advisors who could barely contain their own shock and rage. The president addressed the nation and the world from the Oval Office just 6 hours after Jake's death. Her voice was steady, but her eyes burned with an anger that every human being could recognize. She announced that Ambassador Morrison had been murdered in violation of every law that governed civilized behavior between species. The global response was immediate and unified in a way that had not been seen since the darkest days of the world wars. Every nation on Earth, regardless of political system or historical conflicts, understood that this was no longer about diplomacy or trade agreements. The aliens had declared war on humanity itself by murdering their peaceful representative. Within hours of the president's address, recruitment centers were overwhelmed with volunteers. Defense contractors received unlimited budgets to accelerate weapons development. The space agencies of every major nation began coordinating the largest military mobilization in human history. Sullivan stood before a wall of monitors, showing the mobilization efforts worldwide, and knew that the galaxy had made a terrible mistake. They had killed one human in the belief that it would frighten the rest into submission. Instead, they had awakened something that would not rest until justice was served and Jake Morrison's death was avenged. General Rick Hayes stood in the Pentagon's war room, surrounded by displays showing military preparations across the globe. Operation Righteous Fury had begun just 24 hours after Jake Morrison's execution, and already the scale of human mobilization was staggering. Every spacefaring nation was contributing ships, weapons, and personnel to what was quickly becoming the largest unified military effort in human history. The European Defense Force had pledged their entire deep space fleet, including their newest battleships equipped with experimental plasma weapons. The Asian Coalition Navy was converting civilian cargo vessels into troop transports and supply ships at a rate that impressed even veteran military planners. The American Star Fleet was pulling ships from patrol duties across the solar system to join the growing armada. In laboratories around the world, Dr. Claire Johnson led teams of scientists working around the clock to reverse engineer alien technology, recovered from previous encounters. Her breakthrough came when she realized that alien energy weapons relied on principles that humans had dismissed as impossible. By combining alien concepts with human engineering methods, her team developed weapons that were not only more powerful, but also more efficient than anything either species had created alone. The industrial transformation was visible from orbit, as factory complexes that once produced cars and computers now churned out plasma cannons and quantum torpedoes. The Ford Motor Company had retooled their entire Michigan production line to manufacture Starship engines. Samsung and Apple worked together to produce advanced targeting systems. Even smaller companies contributed by producing the thousands of components needed for modern spacecraft. Captain Sam Davis stood on the bridge of the newly commissioned U's Vengeance, humanity's first true warship designed specifically for fighting aliens. The ship was 3 times larger than any previous human vessel and packed with weapons that had been theoretical just months before. His crew included weapons specialist Tony Garcia, a former artillery officer who had volunteered for the most dangerous assignment in human space. Navigation officer Karen White plotted courses through regions of space that no human had ever explored. Her job was made more difficult by the fact that alien star charts used completely different reference points and measurement systems. She worked closely with captured alien navigation computers, slowly learning to read the strange symbols and energy signatures that marked safe passage through interstellar space. Commander Paul Johnson coordinated intelligence gathering operations using human assets throughout Council space. Many of these were traders and merchants who had operated in alien territory before Jake's execution. They provided crucial information about Council fleet movements, defensive positions, and the locations of important military installations. The spy network had grown rapidly as humans throughout the galaxy learned of Morrison's murder. Restaurant. Workers on alien worlds reported on military conversations they overheard. Human engineers working on alien space stations provided detailed technical specifications. Even human tourists visiting alien planets began gathering intelligence about local defenses and communication systems. President Martinez addressed a special session of the United Nations that had been transformed into humanity's War Council. Representatives from every nation on Earth sat together in unprecedented unity as she outlined the scope of the coming conflict. Her speech was broadcast live to every human settlement from Luna City to the research stations orbiting Jupiter. The president's words were simple but powerful as she explained that humanity would show the galaxy what happened when peaceful beings were pushed too far. She spoke about Jake Morrison's dedication to peace and how his murder represented an attack on everything humans valued. The vote for war was unanimous among all 195 nations, with even traditional neutral countries agreeing that this aggression could not stand. Admiral Sullivan personally supervised the final preparations aboard the flagship UES Retribution, a massive vessel that had been under construction for the past decade as part of humanity's deep space exploration program. The ship had been hastily converted into a command vessel with enough firepower to destroy entire alien fleets. Jake Morrison's personal effects were placed in a special shrine on the bridge as a reminder of why they were fighting. The first human fleet to depart Earth consisted of 200 ships, ranging from massive battleships to small scout vessels. Each ship carried weapons that had never been tested in combat and crews that had trained for months on alien technology. The fleet represented the combined military might of every nation on Earth, unified under a single command structure for the first time in human history. As the fleet prepared to enter hyperspace for the journey to alien territory, messages poured in from humans throughout the solar system. Colonists on Mars contributed rare minerals needed for advanced weapons. Workers on the space stations around Jupiter provided fuel and supplies. Even the researchers at the edge of the solar system sent messages of support and intelligence about alien ship movements. Dr. Johnson's research team achieved another breakthrough just hours before the fleet's departure. They had developed weapons that specifically targeted alien biology while remaining completely harmless to humans. The technology was based on genetic markers that were unique to each alien species, allowing human forces to use area effect weapons without fear of friendly fire incidents. The Psychological Warfare Division, led by Captain Jennifer Stone, prepared broadcasts that would be transmitted throughout alien space. The messages were designed to exploit known weaknesses in alien psychology while demonstrating human resolve. Some messages were threats, while others offered mercy to species that abandoned the Council before human forces arrived. Production facilities on Luna and in the asteroid belt worked at maximum capacity to supply the war effort. Robotic mining operations extracted materials faster than ever before, while human workers volunteered for dangerous assignments in zero gravity. The entire human civilization had become focused on a single goal: making the aliens pay for Jake Morrison's murder. Intelligence reports indicated that panic was spreading through Council space as news of human military preparations reached alien worlds. Several member species were demanding immediate action against Earth, while others suggested attempting to negotiate. The unity that had held the Galactic Council together for over 2,000 years was beginning to crack under the pressure of human determination. Admiral Collins led a separate task force that would target Council communication networks and supply lines. His ships were smaller and faster than the main fleet, designed for hit-and-run attacks that would disrupt alien coordination. The goal was to prevent the Council from mounting an effective defense by keeping their forces confused and isolated. The departure ceremony was broadcast throughout human space as the fleet engaged their hyperspace drives and disappeared in flashes of brilliant light. President Martinez stood at mission control and watched the last ship vanish, knowing that humanity had crossed a line from which there could be no return. The peaceful species that had sought membership in the galactic community was gone, replaced by something harder and more dangerous. Back on the alien station where Jake Morrison had died, High Counselor Vextar received reports of human fleet movements with growing alarm. The species he had dismissed as primitive barbarians was approaching with technology that matched or exceeded anything the Council possessed. For the first time in millennia, the Galactic Council faced an enemy that might actually be capable of destroying them. The war machine that Jake Morrison's death had awakened was now fully operational and heading for alien space with the fury of an entire species behind it. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity's capacity for violence was matched only by their determination to see justice done, regardless of the cost. The human fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Malthan system, like vengeful ghosts materializing from the void. Captain Sam Davis stood on the bridge of the UES Vengeance and watched as his sensors detected the Koroth border world that would become humanity's first target. The planet was defended by what alien intelligence considered a standard garrison force, confident that their military superiority would easily handle any primitive human retaliation. The Koroth had made a fatal miscalculation. Admiral Sullivan's voice crackled over the communication system as she addressed the entire fleet from the flagship UE's Retribution. Her words were simple and direct, reminding every human warrior that they fought not just for victory, but for justice. Jake Morrison's murder would be avenged, and the galaxy would learn that humanity did not forgive those who betrayed their trust. The assault on Nalthan 7 began at dawn local time when the planet's 3 moons were aligned in a configuration that blocked most sensor arrays. Captain Davis led the first wave with 12 heavy cruisers, their enhanced weapons charging as they approached the Koroth defense platforms orbiting the planet. The alien defenders activated their shields and prepared to demonstrate why the Korath Federation was feared throughout the galaxy. They never got the chance. The human weapons tore through Korath energy shields like paper, sending cascades of sparks and debris into space as the alien defense platforms exploded one after another. Tony Garcia, the weapons specialist aboard the Vengeance, coordinated the targeting systems with deadly precision, while Curran White plotted attack vectors that kept the human ships moving too fast for alien gunners to track. The Korath battle. Cruisers that rose from the planet's surface to meet the human attack were impressive vessels by galactic standards. Their plasma weapons could melt through asteroid-sized chunks of metal, and their armor had withstood attacks from every known alien weapon system. Against human innovation, they lasted less than 20 minutes. Dr. Claire Johnson's reverse-engineered technology proved its worth as human ships fired weapons that combined alien energy principles with human engineering concepts. The result was devastation on a scale that shocked even the human crews. Korath ships simply came apart under the barrage, their crews unable to comprehend how primitive human technology could be so effective. Colonel Brad Thompson prepared his ground assault team as the orbital battle raged above. The first Galactic Marines had trained for months in alien environment combat, studying Korath tactics and biology to maximize their effectiveness. His forces included demolitions expert Sergeant Nancy Lewis, whose job was to destroy key military installations, and Field Medic Corporal Chris Brown, who carried medical supplies designed to treat both human and alien injuries. The Marine landing craft descended through Malthon 7's atmosphere under cover of orbital bombardment that systematically eliminated Korath ground defenses. Thompson watched through the transport's windows as alien cities burned below, their defensive turrets reduced to smoking craters by human precision strikes. The psychological impact on Korath defenders was immediate and devastating. Korath warriors were individually stronger and more aggressive than humans, but they had never faced an enemy that combined superior technology with coordinated tactics. Human Marines used combined arms warfare, integrating infantry, armor, and air support in ways that overwhelmed alien defenders who relied primarily on personal combat skills and individual heroism. The battle for the planet's capital city lasted 6 hours. Korath casualties numbered in the thousands, while human losses remained minimal, protected by armor that could deflect most alien weapons and supported by medical technology that could treat injuries that would be fatal under normal circumstances. The aliens' plasma-based weaponry proved less effective than expected against human defensive systems. Sergeant Lewis led a team that captured the planet's main communication center, allowing human forces to intercept and decode Korath military transmissions. The aliens were reporting impossible human capabilities to their superiors, describing weapons and tactics that the Galactic Council had never encountered. Fear was spreading through Korath command structures as reports of human victories reached other worlds. Commander Paul Johnson's intelligence network confirmed that panic was spreading throughout Council space faster than news of human military victories. Several alien species were demanding immediate action against Earth, while others suggested attempting negotiation before the human war machine could gain more momentum. The unity that had held the Council together for millennia was cracking under pressure. The second wave of human attacks targeted Zelani trade routes that supplied raw materials to Council military factories. Captain Linda Foster commanded a fleet of raiders equipped with the fastest human ships ever built, their hyperspace drives allowing them to strike merchant convoys and disappear before alien naval forces could respond. Her tactical officer, Lieutenant Dan Wright, coordinated attacks that crippled the Zelani economy without unnecessary loss of civilian life. The human raiders demonstrated a level of strategic thinking that surprised alien military planners. Rather than simply destroying everything they encountered, Human forces targeted specific installations and supply lines that would maximize long-term damage to Council war efforts. Alien generals found themselves fighting an enemy that understood logistics and economic warfare better than any species they had previously encountered. Dr. Johnson's research team achieved another breakthrough when they developed weapons that specifically targeted alien biology while remaining completely harmless to humans. The technology allowed human forces to use area effect weapons in mixed combat situations without fear of friendly fire casualties. Alien commanders reported that human soldiers seemed immune to their own most powerful weapons. Admiral Steve Collins led a task force deep into Council space to attack the primary communications relay at Nexus Station. The facility was heavily defended and considered impregnable by alien standards, but Collins had studied the station's defensive patterns for weeks through intelligence reports from human spies. His attack was executed with surgical precision, eliminating the station's military capabilities while allowing civilian evacuation. The destruction of Nexus Station sent shockwaves throughout the galaxy as species that had relied on instant communication for thousands of years suddenly found themselves isolated from their allies. Council coordination began to break down as individual worlds were forced to make decisions without guidance from Central Command. Some species began negotiating separate peace agreements with advancing human forces. Reports reached Earth of alien refugees fleeing from human advance forces, carrying stories of unstoppable human technology and tactics that seemed to predict alien movements before they happened. President Martinez addressed these reports in a broadcast to the galaxy, offering safe passage to civilian populations, while making it clear that military resistance would be met with overwhelming force. The Psychological Warfare Division, led by Captain Jennifer Stone, began broadcasting messages throughout alien space that exploited known weaknesses in Council species psychology. The broadcasts reminded aliens that humanity had approached them peacefully, only to have their ambassador murdered in cold blood. And messages were designed to create doubt about Council leadership and encourage defections. High Counselor Vexstar convened emergency sessions as reports of human victories poured in from across Council space. The species he had dismissed as primitive barbarians were systematically dismantling the greatest military alliance in galactic history. For the first time in his long life, the Zelani leader began to fear that the Council might not survive the storm they had unleashed by murdering Jake Morrison. The human war machine that had awakened with Morrison's death was proving unstoppable. Combining superior technology with tactical innovation and an unshakable determination to see justice done. The galaxy was learning that humanity's greatest strength was not their weapons or their courage, but their refusal to accept defeat when fighting for something they believed in. As human fleets pressed deeper into alien territory, reports reached Admiral Sullivan that several Council species were beginning to question the wisdom of Morrison's execution. The unity that had made the Council's decision possible was dissolving under the pressure of human military success and the growing realization that this war might destroy everything the aliens had built over millennia of careful cooperation. 1 year after Jake Morrison's execution, the Galactic Council faced complete collapse as human fleets patrolled every major system that had once been under alien control. The war machine that had awakened with Morrison's death had proven unstoppable. Combining superior technology with tactical innovation and an unshakable determination that had broken the will of species who had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. High Counselor Vexstar stood in chains aboard Admiral Sullivan's flagship. The same crystalline being who had ordered Morrison's execution, now reduced to a broken prisoner begging for mercy. His once proud features had lost their color, and his voice shook as he claimed that the execution had been a mistake made in fear. Admiral Sullivan's response was cold and final, as she reminded him that Jake Morrison had also been afraid, but he had died with dignity while representing the best of humanity. The formal surrender ceremony took place in the same chamber where Morrison had been murdered, with human officials now occupying the platforms that had once held Alien Council. Members: Captain Lisa Brooks, promoted to Admiral after her heroic actions during the Battle of Zarian Prime, accepted the formal surrender of the Korath Federation on behalf of humanity. The warrior species that had prided itself on military superiority knelt before human tactical genius and industrial capacity. The Korath military commander who signed the surrender documents was the same officer who had argued for Morrison's execution based on human aggressive tendencies. Now he handed over his ceremonial weapon to Brooks, while admitting that his species had gravely underestimated human capabilities. The irony was not lost on anyone present that the aliens had created the very war they claimed to fear. The terms of surrender were harsh but fair, designed to prevent future conflicts while rebuilding the shattered galaxy under human guidance. The former Council species would compensate Earth for the enormous cost of the war and provide reparations for Morrison's murder. They would also share their advanced technology and scientific knowledge to accelerate human expansion into the galaxy. Most importantly, the alien species would serve under human oversight to ensure that such atrocities could never happen again. The days of alien self-governance were over, replaced by a system that valued justice and dignity above ancient traditions and species prejudice. Humanity had proven that they could wage war more effectively than any galactic power. But now they would prove they could build peace even better. Dr. Claire Johnson was appointed as the first director of galactic sciences, overseeing the integration of alien knowledge with human innovation in ways that benefited all species. Her research teams worked with alien scientists to develop medical breakthroughs that could cure diseases that had plagued the galaxy for millennia. The human capacity for creation was proving to match their demonstrated ability for destruction. The medical advances came quickly as human researchers applied their problem-solving methods to alien biology and chemistry. Diseases that had killed millions of Zilani over the centuries were eliminated within months of human intervention. Korath genetic disorders that had been considered incurable for thousands of years yielded to human medical technology combined with alien biological knowledge. General Rick Hayes became the first military governor of the former Council territories, establishing an administration that focused on rebuilding infrastructure damaged during the war while maintaining the peace through strength. His governance proved more efficient and fair than the previous council system, earning grudging respect even from former enemies who had initially resented human rule. The reconstruction efforts employed workers from every species in the galaxy, with humans providing leadership and coordination, while aliens contributed their specialized knowledge and skills. Former Korath warriors worked alongside human engineers to rebuild the cities they had once defended. Zilani traders helped establish new economic systems that benefited all species, rather than just the traditionally powerful President. Helen Martinez addressed the galaxy from the former council chambers, standing at the same podium where Vextar had announced Morrison's death sentence. She announced the formation of the Terran Galactic Republic with Earth as its capital and humans as its guiding force. Membership was open to all species, willing to embrace human values of dignity, justice, and progress rather than the old systems based on fear and tradition. The new government structure was designed to prevent the concentration of power that had allowed the old council to commit such atrocities. Representatives from every species would have voices in the new system, but ultimate authority rested with human administrators who had proven their commitment to justice through their response to Morrison's murder. The galaxy would be governed by those who understood the value of every individual life. Commander Paul Johnson established the new intelligence service that would monitor potential threats while protecting the civil rights that the old council had ignored. His network of agents included former spies from every species, united under human leadership to prevent the rise of any new military threats. The system was designed to catch problems before they could grow into wars. The economic transformation was equally dramatic as human. Business methods replaced the rigid trade hierarchies that had dominated galactic commerce for millennia. Free market principles allowed species to prosper based on their contributions rather than their political connections or military power. Former council worlds experienced economic growth rates that had been impossible under the old system. Captain Sam Davis was promoted to admiral and placed in command of the new Galactic Defense Force, a military organization that included the best soldiers from every species under human command. The integrated forces trained together and served together, learning that cooperation was more effective than the species-based military structures that had failed so catastrophically during the war. The cultural exchange programs established by the new government allowed humans and aliens to learn from each other in ways that had been impossible under council rule. Human art and music spread throughout the galaxy, while alien cultural traditions enriched human understanding of the universe. The diversity that the old council had tried to suppress became a source of strength for the new republic. Dr. Johnson's teams made breakthrough discoveries almost weekly as human scientific methods combined with alien knowledge in ways that neither species could have achieved alone. Faster-than-light travel became safer and more efficient, while new technologies emerged that could terraform dead worlds into garden planets capable of supporting multiple species. The memorial to Ambassador Jake Morrison was built in the center of New Geneva, the galactic capital constructed on the ruins of the old council station. His final words were engraved in both human and alien languages. Humanity will not forget. The galaxy had learned the truth of those words through fire and suffering, but in learning had found a future brighter than anything the old system could have provided. Children from dozens of species now played together in parks that had been built where weapons factories once stood. Former enemies worked side by side on projects that would benefit the entire galaxy. The peace that Jake Morrison had tried to achieve through diplomacy had finally been won through the demonstrated strength and justice of the species he had died representing. The galaxy that had dismissed humans as primitive barbarians now looked to Earth for leadership and guidance. In trying to eliminate what they saw as a threat, the old council had instead created the very force that would replace them with something infinitely better. Humanity's greatest victory was not the destruction of their enemies, but the creation of a galactic civilization based on the values that Jake Morrison had died defending.